When you go silent, a woman notices. She wonders what you're thinking, questions her own worth, and feels your presence even louder in your absence. Silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It creates mystery, shifts the power, and makes her realize that your value isn't in words, but in disciplined presence. Silence is one of the most powerful forms of communication, yet it is often misunderstood. People assume that talking more will make them more convincing, more attractive, or more respected. But the truth is, silence often carries more weight than any words could. When you go silent, you create space, and that space becomes a mirror where others begin to project their own thoughts, fears, and desires. This is why silence is louder than words. It does not just leave a void. It speaks volumes without you ever needing to explain yourself. When a man chooses silence, especially in situations where others expect him to react, it becomes a statement of strength. It signals discipline and control over emotions. Anyone can shout, argue, or speak endlessly to prove a point, but it takes composure to remain silent. That silence can leave the other person questioning themselves, rethinking their actions, and trying to decode your presence. Instead of chasing validation with words, your silence forces others to lean in and wonder what lies beneath the surface. Silence also creates an air of mystery. When you constantly explain yourself, reveal your feelings, or try to justify your actions, you take away curiosity. But silence leaves things unsaid, and those unsaid things are what make people intrigued. A woman, for example, notices every detail when you go quiet. She begins to wonder what's on your mind, whether you're truly invested, or whether she has to put in more effort to keep your attention. This curiosity can often pull her closer to you because silence naturally triggers reflection. Moreover, silence is louder than words because it communicates respect for yourself. Words are often used to seek validation, to prove something, or to demand attention. But silence says, I don't need to explain myself. I know who I am. It is a form of self-respect that commands respect from others. People may not admit it openly, but they remember the one who didn't overreact, the one who didn't beg for attention, the one who let their absence speak louder than any explanation. In relationships, silence can shift the dynamic in unexpected ways. When you withhold unnecessary words, you stop giving away your energy so easily. You stop filling the space with constant reassurance or justification. Instead, you let the other person feel the weight of your silence, and that weight can be heavier than any argument. A pause, a quiet moment, or even stepping back can often reveal more about the truth of a connection than hours of conversation. Silence is powerful because it cannot be faked. Words can be rehearsed, manipulated, or exaggerated, but silence is real. It's raw. It makes people uncomfortable because they can't control or predict it. And that is exactly why it speaks louder. It forces the mind to fill in the blanks. And in doing so, it often reveals more about the other person than about you. When you go silent, one of the first things a woman does is turn inward and begin questioning herself. Silence has a way of creating a vacuum, and human nature naturally wants to fill that empty space with meaning. Instead of brushing it off, she starts wondering what your silence means and how it reflects on her. Was it something she said? Was it the way she acted? Did she push you away without realizing it? Your lack of words doesn't just stay with you. It echoes in her mind and stirs emotions she can't ignore. This questioning isn't always about guilt. It's about significance. She begins to measure her value in your eyes by the weight of your silence. When you stop giving immediate attention or constant reassurance, she starts wondering if she truly holds your focus the way she thought she did. That's when silence becomes more than absence. It becomes presence. She can't escape it. The more you withhold your words, the more she feels the need to interpret your behavior. And in that interpretation, she exposes her own insecurities and hidden fears. Women are naturally intuitive, and when a man goes quiet, her intuition goes into overdrive. She starts replaying moments, searching for hidden signs, and analyzing her own role in the connection. Did she give too much? Did she not give enough? Your silence forces her into self-reflection in a way your words never could. Because words often give clarity, but silence leaves room for doubt. And doubt is powerful. It lingers, it burns slowly, and it keeps her mind occupied with you even when you're not around. But here's the beauty of it. Your silence doesn't only trigger self-doubt, it also makes her realize your importance. When you remove your words, she feels the difference between your presence and your absence. If you were just ordinary, she wouldn't notice the silence at all. But the fact that she questions herself means she values you enough to be unsettled by your withdrawal. That questioning, as uncomfortable as it may be for her, often deepens her awareness of what you mean in her life. In relationships, many men think constant reassurance is what women want. And while validation has its place, it is silence that tests her investment. If she truly values you, your silence will make her reflect instead of replace you. She won't just move on, she'll pause and wonder what she could do differently. And that pause is powerful because it places the weight of the connection not only on your shoulders, but on hers as well. Silence shifts her focus inward. It strips away the noise of arguments, explanations, and excuses. It leaves her face to face with herself, with her own patterns, with her own accountability. That kind of self-questioning is uncomfortable, but it's also transformative. And whether she admits it or not, your silence becomes the trigger that makes her reevaluate not only the relationship, but also who she is within it. Mystery has always been at the core of attraction. It is the unknown that keeps people hooked, the unanswered questions that stir curiosity, and the unpredictability that makes someone unforgettable. When you go silent, you create that very mystery. You step back from the constant need to explain, to share every detail, or to prove yourself with words. And in doing so, you leave gaps that her mind desperately wants to fill. Those gaps become powerful because the human mind craves certainty, and when it doesn't get it, it lingers, it wonders, and it searches. That wondering is what builds attraction. When a man is too available with his words, too eager to explain himself, or too quick to share everything, he removes the sense of discovery. Nothing is left for her imagination, and what is fully known too soon is rarely valued. But when you withhold, when you keep certain things to yourself, you invite curiosity. She begins to wonder who you really are, what you're thinking, what drives you, and what you're hiding behind that quiet strength. Mystery pulls her in because it keeps her engaged with a story she hasn't fully read yet. Attraction isn't just about what is seen, it's about what is felt and imagined. Silence feeds the imagination in ways that words cannot. A woman will often find herself replaying interactions, dissecting your behavior, and trying to uncover your intentions. Instead of you chasing her with words, she chases your silence with her thoughts. That chase is what deepens the attraction because it shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, she is the one seeking answers, and you become the one who doesn't need to provide them. Mystery also communicates depth. When you don't lay everything on the table, it suggests there is more to you than what meets the eye. It shows that you are not desperate to be understood or validated instantly. That depth becomes magnetic because people are naturally drawn to what they cannot easily grasp. The less she knows, the more she wants to know. The more you stay composed in silence, the more she imagines layers to your personality. And those layers, whether real or imagined, build your presence in her mind. Even in the modern world where everyone overshares, mystery stands out as rare. It is refreshing because it breaks the pattern. While others talk too much, explain too much, or expose every detail, the one who stays silent appears stronger, more controlled, and more intriguing. Silence becomes your armor, but also your magnet. It keeps her guessing, keeps her curious, and keeps her attracted without you ever having to prove anything. Attraction that lasts is not built on words alone. It is built on the tension between what is known and what is unknown. Mystery sustains that tension. It keeps her emotionally invested, waiting and wondering. And the moment you realize that your silence is not emptiness, but a tool of attraction, you'll understand why mystery has always been more powerful than constant explanation. Silence has a way of testing patience in ways words never can. When you stop responding, when you no longer give instant validation, or when you choose not to explain yourself, it puts the other person in a place of waiting. And waiting is uncomfortable, especially for someone who is used to receiving quick attention. A woman who truly values you will be challenged by your silence because it forces her to sit with her own emotions instead of being distracted by your constant words. She will want answers. She will want reassurance. She will want to know where she stands, but your silence makes her wait, and that waiting becomes the true test of her patience. When you remain silent, she begins to realize that not everything revolves around her timeline. Most men, in an attempt to keep a woman close, will rush to explain, to defend, or to resolve conflict right away. But when you hold back, when you refuse to give in to that urgency, it signals that you are not operating from desperation. Instead, you show that you are willing to let things unfold naturally. This unsettles her at first, because patience is rare in a world of instant gratification. But the longer you remain silent, the more she is forced to decide how much she truly values the connection. If her interest is shallow, she will give up easily. But if her feelings run deep, she will endure the discomfort of waiting, and that endurance reveals her true level of investment. Silence also exposes maturity. Some women will get frustrated, angry, or even lash out when they don't get a quick response, showing that they are more attached to control than connection. Others, however, will slow down, reflect, and recognize that silence does not always mean disinterest. This difference is crucial because patience is a marker of emotional strength. Your silence creates a filter. It separates those who can handle discomfort with grace from those who cannot. And the one who can sit in that silence without breaking is the one who is truly aligned with your energy. At the same time, silence tests not only her patience, but also her perception of value. If she believes you are worth the wait, she will endure it. She may not like it, she may feel unsettled by it, but she won't walk away from it. This is where silence becomes powerful, because it shows you how much she is willing to stretch herself for you. Words can be faked, promises can be empty, but patience cannot. The way she responds to your silence reveals more about her character than anything she could say. What many don't realize is that patience is one of the strongest indicators of real attraction. Anyone can stay when things are easy, but patience is staying when things are uncertain. Your silence creates that uncertainty, and how she handles it tells you everything. If she respects you, she will wait. If she doesn't, she will try to control you or walk away. Either way, your silence uncovers the truth without you saying a single word. Power in relationships is rarely about who speaks the loudest or who demands the most. It's about who holds control over themselves. Silence, when used with discipline, shifts that balance completely. When you stop explaining, stop over-talking, and stop rushing to fill every gap with words, you reclaim your energy. You no longer give her constant access to your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. That shift immediately changes the dynamic, because now she feels the weight of your absence rather than the comfort of your constant presence. Most men give away their power unknowingly through words. They overshare, they overexplain, they justify, and in doing so, they place control in someone else's hands. The moment you pour out everything, you give the other person the ability to measure, judge, and even manipulate your emotions. But silence breaks that cycle. When you go quiet, you're no longer predictable. You're no longer feeding into her expectations of how you should respond. That unpredictability flips the balance of power. Suddenly, she is the one analyzing, questioning, and seeking clarity, while you remain centered and unbothered. This shift is not about playing games, it's about self-mastery. Silence communicates that you don't need to control everything with words because you already control yourself. And self-control is the ultimate power. When she realizes that she cannot easily provoke you, cannot always pull a reaction out of you, and cannot predict your every move, she begins to see you differently. You are no longer someone she can easily read or manage. You become a man she has to respect because your silence proves you are not at her mercy emotionally. Silence also takes away the immediate gratification that many women unconsciously expect. When you don't instantly respond to her words, whether sweet or harsh, she feels the shift. She realizes she doesn't hold as much power over your emotional state as she thought. Instead of you chasing her approval or trying to prove yourself, she finds herself trying to understand you. That switch from you seeking her validation to her seeking your presence is the core of the power dynamic shift. And here's the deeper truth. Real attraction thrives in respect. A woman may enjoy attention, but she admires a man who is not ruled by her. Your silence draws a line that says, I am not here to entertain or explain myself endlessly. I will not give more than is necessary. That line sets the tone of the relationship. It teaches her that you are not a man who can be pushed, manipulated, or controlled by emotions alone. And once that understanding sets in, the respect grows. Power is never about domination, it's about positioning. By choosing silence, you position yourself as someone who does not need to overprove. You are the calm center in the storm. You are the one who is not easily swayed. And in that steadiness, the power naturally shifts, because the one who reacts the least controls the most. When you go silent, one of the strongest impressions you leave behind is a question about your emotional strength. A woman naturally tries to read the depth of a man, and much of that is revealed not by what he says, but by what he can withhold. Silence shows her that you are not a prisoner to your impulses, not a man who needs to spill every thought or emotion the moment it arises. It tells her that you have the discipline to control yourself, and discipline is the clearest sign of strength. Most men expose their emotional weakness through overreaction. They get defensive too quickly, argue too often, or seek constant reassurance to feel secure. But when you remain quiet, especially in moments of tension, you send a different message: that you are grounded, that you don't need to be shaken or provoked by circumstances or emotions. To a woman, this is powerful because it suggests stability, and stability is rare. She begins to wonder how much control you truly have over yourself, and that curiosity deepens her attraction. Silence also communicates confidence. You don't need to validate yourself with constant explanations or loud declarations. You let your presence speak without forcing it. This restraint is not weakness, it's mastery. It shows her that you are not dependent on her reaction for your sense of worth. The man who can remain silent without fear of losing her is the man who has already built his strength from within. That kind of independence is magnetic because it shows you are not driven by desperation but by self-respect. When you choose silence, especially after being tested, she begins to measure you differently. She wonders if your quiet is a sign of deep patience, wisdom, or even hidden power. She starts questioning how much you can endure without breaking. That question works in your favor because it elevates you in her eyes. Instead of seeing you as someone she can easily control emotionally, she sees you as someone who cannot be easily shaken. That steadiness creates respect, and respect is the foundation of lasting attraction. It's also important to understand that women test men unconsciously, and silence is one of the most telling responses. If she throws emotions at you, anger, accusations, or even manipulation, and you react instantly, she sees that she can pull you in any direction. But if you stay calm, if you choose silence over reaction, she begins to recognize your emotional strength. She may not admit it, but deep down, she respects it. Because while words can be faked, silence cannot. To hold back requires real inner power. And in the end, your silence makes her wonder about the man behind it. She questions how strong you really are, how much you feel, and how much you choose not to show. That curiosity alone sets you apart. It tells her that you are not a man who gives everything away, not a man who is ruled by emotions, but one who rules over them. And that is the kind of strength that lingers long after the words fade. Respect is not something that can be demanded. It is something that is earned through the way you carry yourself. Silence plays a crucial role in this because it creates the space for respect to grow. When you choose not to respond immediately, when you do not rush to defend yourself or over-explain, you show that you value your own energy. You are not just giving it away freely. That restraint signals strength, and strength is always respected. Many men make the mistake of trying too hard to prove themselves through words. They explain endlessly, justify their choices, and give too much information, thinking it will win them admiration. But instead of gaining respect, they lose it because overexposure makes you too predictable and too easy to figure out. Silence, on the other hand, creates a boundary. It communicates that not everything about you is accessible and not everything deserves a response. That boundary forces others, especially women, to see you differently. They realize that you are not desperate for validation and that realization naturally builds respect. Silence also stops unnecessary conflict. Arguments often escalate because both sides want the last word. But when you decide not to engage, when you let silence be your answer, you show maturity. You demonstrate that you don't need to waste your energy proving a point to be right. Instead, you value peace over ego. This self-control does not go unnoticed. Even if she is frustrated in the moment, over time, she will respect the fact that you didn't let emotions dictate your actions. What makes silence powerful is that it creates contrast. In a world where everyone talks too much, the one who speaks less stands out. By saying less, your words eventually carry more weight because people learn that when you do speak, it is intentional. A woman, in particular, begins to listen more carefully when she realizes you don't waste words. That attentiveness is a form of respect that silence naturally commands. Silence also shifts the focus onto her. When you don't immediately fill the space with your perspective, she has to reflect on her own. She has to consider her words, her actions, and her role in the situation. This reflection wouldn't happen if you were constantly explaining yourself. Your silence becomes the mirror that forces her to see herself clearly. And anyone who can create that level of awareness earns respect because it shows you are strong enough to let the truth reveal itself without forcing it. Most importantly, silence proves that you are not afraid of being misunderstood. That confidence alone earns respect because it shows you don't need to chase anyone's approval. You know who you are and you don't have to defend it constantly. The man who can stand firm in silence communicates that his value does not depend on convincing others. It speaks for itself. That quiet confidence is what transforms silence into a space where respect grows naturally, without effort and without words. Your silence has a way of lingering long after words fade. It becomes a presence that cannot be ignored. While words are fleeting, often forgotten as soon as they are spoken, silence leaves an imprint because it is felt rather than just heard. When you choose silence, you create a kind of presence that demands attention. Even without speaking, your energy fills the space, and she cannot help but notice it. This is why silence, rather than absence, becomes a powerful form of presence. When you go silent, you force people to engage with you differently. They can't rely on your words to guide them, to reassure them, or to reveal what you're thinking. Instead, they are left with the weight of your stillness. That weight carries power. It draws her focus toward you because she must work harder to interpret you. Silence makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability makes you unforgettable. She doesn't just hear your silence, she feels it, and that feeling lingers long after the moment has passed. Presence is not about noise, it is about impact. Some men think that the more they say, the more they will be remembered, but often it is the man who holds back, who speaks less and who lets silence do the talking, that leaves the strongest impression. Words can blur together, but silence stands out. A woman may forget what you said, but she won't forget how she felt in the silence you created. That emotional imprint becomes your lasting presence in her mind. Silence also amplifies the moments when you do choose to speak. If you are always talking, your words lose their weight. But if you remain silent most of the time, when you finally say something, it hits harder. It commands attention because it is rare. This is how silence transforms into presence. It builds anticipation, and anticipation heightens impact. She listens more closely, values your words more deeply, and remembers them more clearly because they are not given carelessly. On a deeper level, silence is presence because it reflects self-assurance. You are not trying to prove yourself with constant noise. You are not filling the space just to be noticed. Instead, you are secure enough in yourself to let your quietness speak for you. That calmness is magnetic. It communicates that you do not need attention. You command it without effort, and that effortless command is what creates true presence. Even in absence, silence lingers. She may replay your quiet moments in her head, trying to decode them, trying to figure out what they meant. The fact that she's still thinking about you, even when you've said nothing, is proof that your silence has become your presence. You don't need to push for recognition or chase validation. Your quiet strength speaks louder than any words ever could, leaving an impression that stays long after you've walked away. At the heart of it all, silence is not emptiness, it is power. Every pause, every moment you choose not to respond carries a message louder than words could ever deliver. It makes her question herself, it creates mystery, it tests her patience, it shifts the balance of power, and it makes her reflect on your emotional strength. Your silence builds respect because it sets boundaries, and eventually it becomes your presence, something she feels, remembers, and cannot ignore. In a world where everyone rushes to speak, to explain, and to prove themselves, the man who can stay silent separates himself from the noise. His value rises not because he shouts the loudest, but because he doesn't need to. His silence speaks of confidence, discipline, and depth, and that silence leaves an imprint far stronger than words ever could. So understand this: silence is not weakness, and it is never emptiness. It is the language of strength, the mark of self-control, and the essence of mystery. When you master it, you no longer chase attention, you command it. You no longer beg for respect, you earn it. And in that silence, you become unforgettable.